Star Cowboys podcast. I'm Kevin Turner. We have Saad Youssef. We have Kent Garrison. And we will hear from John Machota live from AT&T Stadium. We're coming to you late Monday, actually early Tuesday morning. We've crossed over into early Tuesday morning here. Weird one at AT&T Stadium tonight as the Cowboys lose 27-17. I would call this the kill shot. What do you think, Saad?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you lose to the backup quarterback of a team that's down bad like the Arizona Cardinals are, I don't know that there's really any silver linings to gain from this. When they lost to the Panthers, it was at least, I guess, a team that had performed well. Rico Dowdle had played well the week before. Whatever. Yeah, I guess you could talk yourself into, and that was a close game. But the scoreboard doesn't even do justice to how lopsided this game was. For the Cardinals. So I think that is about the kill shot. And what really stings is it's not just the defense in this game. I think that's what's really tough. It's not just the defense. I mean, the offense, if you look at it, the offense was shut out. 0 points in the first half. Dak Prescott had 75 yards passing. CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens had 2 catches apiece for 20 and 28 yards. I mean, that was an atrocious first half altogether. The only silver lining, of course, being the block punt, which resulted in a touchdown. But other than that, the Cowboys had a terrible first half. They had a bad second half. It was just nasty all around. So, yeah, I would agree, KT. I think that is pretty much the kill shot for the season.
Yeah, and this is one of those things, too, where you just have that eerie feeling before the game, like Jerry talking about making a trade and hanging out with Stephen A. Smith all day. Like, I don't really care about any of that stuff, but it does give you that, like, icky feeling of, okay, well, tonight's going to be strange, isn't it? And then for the Cowboys to get the ball and then not punch it in on that first drive again, you're kind of like, okay, here we go again, like kind of like last week. So, like, it all felt gross before. Like, Jerry's the one guy in the league who would go out and say something like that, oh, we've already made a trade. And, whether they have or not, like, we'll figure that, all out tomorrow, or I guess later on today. But, like, this is where it's just like, they're so ass backwards. And I keep going back to a couple things. Like, think about, like, this is a 3-5-1 team right now. And the tie, like, I don't know, feels like, the Cowboys could have won that game, I guess. It's just not enough. And the schedule's not as hard as we might have projected earlier in the year. Like, if you looked at their strength of schedule moving forward, they're like the 22nd easiest schedule moving forward. But it is that gauntlet of Lions, Eagles, Chiefs that we've talked about many times that's gonna hurt you, and not in that order. But, like, I think it's foolish to even be talking about adding something unless it's like something that's gonna be here for multiple years. Like, to me, I think it's malpractice to not be having discussions about guys like Javonte Williams, quite frankly, who's just not on the books for next year. And if you want him here next year, you can find a way to work that out. And I don't really have a lot of interest in trying to go the franchise tag route with George Pickens. These are conversations that I think real teams would be having right now. But the Cowboys are not that. They're not a real organization. It is Jerry's fantasy land.
George Pickens, I think those are two different conversations because George Pickens is a unique top-end number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. So I think that part of it is where you have to really think about, like, okay, if we do trade him, it's hard to get a player like this. Javonte Williams, as Rico Dowdle is showing you in Carolina, he's the guy. And I'm not taking anything away from Javonte. He's had a great year, but Rico Dowdle would be doing the same thing in Dallas, and you can find these running backs for, $5-6 million, $3, $4, $5, $6 million a year, and plug them into your offense, especially when you have those weapons on the outside. So, no, I agree with you, KT. But before we get too deep into trade talk, real quick on the game, because you mentioned not being able to punch it in on the first drive. There was some chatter that I saw about, well, if they kicked the field goal, then when it was like 27-17 late in the game, it would have been one possession game. I'm not here for any of that hindsight. They did the right thing. They had to go for that. The fact that they didn't get it, the fact that Dak got sacked, that sucks. Maybe we can talk about the red zone play calling, which was atrocious. Um, that's on Schottenheimer too, if we're being honest. But they had to go for that fourth down. That is exactly what we were talking about after the Denver game, that you have to coach differently. And yeah, they had to go for it. They made the right decision. It just didn't pan out.
100%. And I think you're even proven right, because I think what people will do when they see that is look at how this game went and the fact that the Cardinals didn't put up 40 points like every other team's been doing. But like, the Cardinals did take the ball after that, and they went 15 plays, and there were multiple penalties, and there's a lot of bad stuff. And the Cowboys holding them to a field goal doesn't change anything. Like, we all watched the defense, all right? So don't get your hopes up about what you might have saw getting 2 stops in the fourth quarter right there. When it's 27-10 and things like that. Like that's way different. This is what it is. And it's really bad on defense. So like, this game shouldn't stop you from playing that way. In 2 weeks against the Raiders, like that's how you have to play, because that's what, by the way, that's like how a lot of teams play anyways. And teams who are like on the ropes all the times are starting to play that way, because they know it's like, okay, we don't have that much of a chance. Now, the Cowboys have enough talent to, with their offense to stay in these games. I think that's another frustrating thing. We were a little frustrated with the offense last week. We'll multiply that times 2 for this game. The Cowboys do hold them to a field goal and then get another 3 and out and punt it right back to Arizona. So, it's 10-0. Marvin Harrison Jr. breaks Deron Bland's ankles. My goodness. Yeah. Oh, my. Tough matchup for Deron Bland. That's the only good thing I can really say, is that, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not the prototypical wide receiver you want Deron Bland going up against all day long. But that's looking like a bad signing. Like, it has not been good. And I don't know if it's a different scheme or whatever, talk about that, whatever. But, like, that was really put on display right now. Their 2 big signings after they traded Micah, Jake Ferguson and Deron Bland, were awful tonight.
Yeah. I think Ferguson was during training camp, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean,
you're right.
Regardless,
Hunter Lipke would have been the other emergency signing.
Right. Yeah, but no, on your point about Deron Bland, I don't know if you saw this, but on Twitter I started a thread where I'm basically listing out every week there's some player that does something that they haven't done all season long, and in some cases in their career before, against this Cowboys defense. And Marvin Harrison Jr., 7 catches. That's a career high for the first round pick last year in 2024. I don't know if you remember, but earlier this season, there were a lot of loud questions about Marvin Harrison Jr. and what he's capable of. He was dropping passes. It was not looking good, but this was the get right game that he needed. And you're right. I think what was the most disheartening thing about this is that it was like they were picking on Deron Bland. There was one point in the game where Marvin Harrison Jr. was lined up on Kalen Carson. And I was like, if I was a quarterback or offensive coordinator, I'm picking on that matchup. That's how they treated Deron Bland, though. It was almost like they were picking on Deron Bland whenever he was in coverage. So, that was really disheartening to watch. And to your point about the Cowboys offense overall in general, not only was it the 3 and out that they had on their second drive, but it was all the shooting yourself in the foot, whether it was the turnover on downs on the first drive, Jake Ferguson fumbling, Javonte Williams fumbling late, drop passes. Jake Ferguson had a drop pass. It was just, the offensive line looked so bad. It was hard to stomach that too. So I think all the way around, I know a lot of people are going to want to blame Dak. I don't think Dak played well either, but trust me, if we started listing out the problems tonight, Dak would not be, in the top 3 to 5 on my list.
No, 100%. I mean, so it's 10-0 at that point. And like you said, the Ferguson, he gets called for holding too, and then he fumbles. Cowboys do get a stop with Clowney, gets a big sack, and then the Sam Williams blocks the punt. Marshawn Nealon showing great control right there. How many times do you see those guys run to the end zone and just kick it through there? Or great control to just sit on it like that. It was like playing duck duck goose. You got to stop and get back in the circles. And Marshawn Nealon gets it. So 10-7 because the special teams makes a play for you, keep you in it, and then the defense can't respond at all. Like, that's the whole thing. The place is rocking at that point. Blocked punt, touchdown, 10-7. It's on now. We're cooking. And then, dude, Arizona just goes right down the field to the point where you're like thinking, I think I should let them score before the half because they get the ball in the second half. So we got to let them score so we have time to get the ball back, which is crazy, but it's, again, how they have to play.
Tweet that, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, to be honest, that's, again, going back to last week's conversation of how unique of a situation Schottenheimer is in, where he has to reprogram his brain a little bit, where when you do get down there, you have to be like, okay, what are the chances? Honestly, I feel like there's a better chance of Jacoby Brissett mishandling the snap like he did one time early in the game than the Cowboys defense actually getting a stop. So I do think if you're Schottenheimer in that situation, when the first down is on the 3-yard line, 4-yard line, you gotta, and when they run that sweep off to the left, you gotta let them score because you have a better chance of letting them score and then matching that with 7 with a couple of timeouts and a minute 30 on the clock than whatever actually transpired. So I totally agree with you on that, and it sounds wacky and kind of almost like satire, but that's really what it is. And again, I think some of this is Schottenheimer having some honest conversations about what roster he has, what team he's coaching. Last week we were talking about, well, you got to go for it on your own 29 on fourth and 5, 4th and 1, whatever the case is. Well, I know that's usually a strategy that's safe for late in the game, where you might let someone score. Remember, the Cowboys tried to do that against the Panthers, where they tried to let them score late in the game. But no, I totally agree with you. They should have let them score, and that was their best chance to make the most of that situation.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like I'm out here like defending the guy too much, but like Brian Schottenheimer is in a tough position here because think about just being a first-time head coach in general, and you're kind of having to do some unorthodox things, or at least you're trying to coach this in a way that maybe you wouldn't normally do, and you're having to do some maybe questionable things because your defense has put you in such a bad spot. So you're having to do some things that just are just a little bit off, and it's not what you want to do. And you're a first-time head coach. Like that's like some look in the mirror stuff, and that's always like tough. Like, this is not how I want to do it, and then realizing it's how you have to do it, and all the public scrutiny that comes with that or whatever. But that's being the head coach of the Cowboys, I guess. 17-7 after the Cardinals go score very easily. The Cowboys don't have any timeouts left. Man, I think they escaped a very terrible Dak injury, by the way, too, getting his ankle rolled up there. But then, Ferguson gets pushed out of bounds, and then the Cowboys have to spike it, and it sets up a 68-yard field goal with Brandon Aubrey. And I think that was the most anticipatory crowd excitement that you saw all night, because when the crowd saw what was happening, it was kind of fun to hear the crowd go kind of crazy in a 68-yard attempt, which would have been good, but just a little bit wide left. And 17-7, now it's not a one-score game anymore, and then Arizona gets the ball out of the half, and you know what happens there. How about 3 plays for 74 yards? No biggie. 3 plays. We're good. And it's 24-7, and the game's over.
Later in the second half, the Cowboys were generating a little bit of pressure, and they were, getting home to Jacoby Brissett there for a drive or two. I was listening this past week, and our friend Jake Kemp, he was mentioning how there hasn't been a whole lot of change on the defense aside from Micah Parsons being gone. It's a lot of carryover. Obviously, not talking about the defense that was on the field tonight because there's been a whole lot of injuries, and so that's a little different. But when you kind of think about that, and there is some truth to it, but also that means that you're really shining the light really bright on Matt Eberflus, because that's the only big other difference. So you're either going to say Micah Parsons is making the whole difference, which I do think Micah is a big, big difference maker. We know the numbers, the stats about the impact that he has on the whole defense. But I also think that Matt Eberflus, man, like you have to take a really hard look at kind of what he's doing and also like how he's using the personnel that he does have at his disposal. If you know what you have in the back end, if you know that you don't have the guys up front to get pressure, why are you waiting until the third quarter to start bringing some pressure and getting blitzes on? I don't understand what the logic behind that could be. So I think that's another thing that you kind of have to think about is just, aside from the personnel, the coaching specifically on the defensive side has been a sore spot all season long, but it's kind of becoming more obvious as the season does go along.
I could not agree more. Like, there's not enough there on that end to make you like, if you're like trying to be like super reasonable and look for excuses even for like the defensive coaching staff. There's not enough there to make you even start going down that path. And it's November, so like we're halfway through here. So I know we do it too far away from it, but like, trade deadlines tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. Jerry is, after the game when he met with the media, he did walk it back a little, basically saying that he doesn't have any interest in trading away their current players and saying that he likes the nuts and bolts a lot. But, he also just basically kept telling the media that he did not expect them to lose tonight. So that could just be, hey, big crowd at Texas Live, hanging out with this guy, Stephen A. Smith, just a little intoxicated by the atmosphere. And, it's my day here, so let's throw it out. Jerry loves those. I bet Jerry loves Monday Night Football when they're the only game on the slate. Those home games and ESPN's camping out at Texas Live. He loves it. So maybe that's what that was all about. It's an easy thing to do too. I mean, they could have had some very big conversations, and some of those conversations just might as well, like, we know Jerry's like super optimistic guy at all times. So he thought for sure they're going to be 4-4 and they're going to make a trade and have the bye week and beat the Raiders. And we're 5-4 and look at us sneaking in. And I don't know. That seems insane. And, it's not surprising, I guess, but it's also, you don't see him walk stuff back very often. And he did a little bit although he was not very specific with the media after the game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also think that, KT, I think after this game in particular, if we're also kind of keeping our eyes on the season and not turning the page all the way, I do have a new concern for the Cowboys because the defense at all three levels has been a concern, and I'm not concerned about the passing game or the offense. I'm not really concerned about Dak, CD, Pickens, Jake Ferguson, Javonte Williams, but I am getting a little concerned about that defensive line because if the Arizona Cardinals are going to do that to you, and you have Cooper Beebe out there, you have Tyler Smith out there, you have Tyler Guyton out there, Tyler Booker, Terrence Steele, Nate Thomas, like you had all your horses out there on the offensive line, and Dak could not breathe. And I know the game turned one-dimensional, so they're able to tee off. I understand that. But that's probably the newest concern that I have coming out of the game is, I don't know, you talk about the gauntlet of a schedule that the Cowboys have coming up, and next week is the bye week. After that, though, they have Max Crosby on the defensive line, and Brock Bowers just came back and scored 3 touchdowns in his return game. I'm not exactly chalking this up to, the gauntlet that awaits. I think they have to take on the Raiders with all seriousness because that's kind of how we approached the Arizona game, and that did not go well.
Yeah, no doubt. And like Arizona to me is a team that can hang with anyone and has shown that they can, so I think they're a little better than what their record has shown. I think they're a little better than being a team that had lost 5 straight. I think something I would say about that, like the Cowboys, if you just look at there's like a trend here of guys that they sign and then you're still looking for more. And I think Deron Bland tonight would be the cover boy for that headline. But like Terrence Steele has the second highest, cap number on the team. I don't know. I think we're still in the evaluation stage of some of the rest of the offensive linemen, so it's kind of hard to start penning stuff on them. But Deron Bland, Jake Ferguson's been fine, but Osa's been some game changer. I think Osa's probably been fine on a defense that's lost. And what can you do? Trayvon Diggs signed. Doesn't give you much. I mean, there's a pretty deep trend of guys that you've signed and given pretty decent money and them not playing up to their contracts as well. I would say, hell, dude, it's crazy because he doesn't feel like you gave him. I'd say Donovan Wilson is on that. Donovan Wilson is your fourth highest cap hit this year. Kevontae Turpin is a guy who I would say is not playing up to his contract. There's a lot of names you can throw out there, and I could probably keep going. And that's a bit of an issue as well. But I hate it. I hate that we're doing this in early November. I just don't see how anyone even looks at this trade deadline and is not thinking ahead.
I will say, I think there is one silver lining to take from the game, and that is that if the Cowboys came out and beat the Arizona Cardinals by 10 points or whatever, I think the front office would be inclined to do something dumb at the trade deadline a lot more because it's just Jerry is the ultimate optimist. I think he would look at that exactly the way that you mentioned about get this win, get a bye, get a win against the Raiders and things like that. I think this might actually calm the waters a little bit. And if they had beaten Arizona, nothing was fundamentally different about this Cowboys team. So I honestly think if you're looking for a silver lining to come from the game, this game may have saved the Cowboys from themselves from doing some kind of dumb trade, such as last year's Jonathan Mingo trade, by the way. Mingo has been healthy for the last 2 games and has been inactive. He's been available, but hasn't played. So I think if you're looking for any positive, that's the only thing I can come up with is, maybe this loss saved the Cowboys from themselves.
Man, I just sucks. I was hoping just for the fun of just for the thrill of the thing, go get the win and get your bye week and then get the Raiders and see what happens. Because again, there's some games that there at the end, obviously the Commanders game doesn't look as tough as it might have looked going into the year. You always feel good when you play the Giants. We've played with the Eagles before, in their house the night that they got the ring, and it's crazy to think that you could hang in there. But this is just not where we're at. So, all right. Is there anything else you'd like to close with, Saad, before we go get John Machota's thoughts on the game?
No, I think we pretty much hit it all from the game, and we'll have another podcast here this week discussing all the other stuff. But from the game, yeah, I think what you said to lead it off was right on point. That felt like the season right there. That felt like for Cowboys fans, I think the season now is more interesting on Saturdays. Get a good look at what kind of players you want in the draft, and I think that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, and obviously, if there's anything else that happens, any trade deadline movement that we feel is worthy, we'll come back with an emergency podcast tomorrow, and that's where we stand. There's our Saad's thoughts. Make sure you're following him on X, over at The Athletic. Follow Kent Garrison as well. I am Kevin Turner, and we will leave you with the beautiful voice of a man who's definitely going to have some hot thoughts on what happened at AT&T Stadium tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Father John Machota.
Another Cowboys loss, and similar feelings for me as when I was leaving the stadium in Charlotte. If you can't beat that Panthers team, what makes you think that you could beat the Eagles or the Chiefs or the Lions or the Vikings or the Chargers? Because, hey, that's what was coming up ahead in the very near future. Similar feelings with this Arizona Cardinals game. This, to me, is an absolute must-win in a season of where the schedule only gets tougher. You can make the argument. I totally understand. Carolina is a much better team right now than we thought going into that game. Maybe that happens with Arizona, too. And maybe just the Cowboys are one of the worst teams in the NFL. maybe we should have stopped talking playoffs a long time ago. You can definitely stop talking about them now, because there is no way that they're going to run off enough games to make a playoff run, to win 9-10 games. That's just not happening. Not when you look that way against that Arizona Cardinals team, that team that was coming off of 5 consecutive losses. There's nothing special about that Cardinals team, and they just came into your building after you laid an egg in Denver. So you would think that the team would be extremely motivated, extremely focused, certainly not using any excuses that were used in Denver about crowd noise or communication issues. You're playing in your building. You just can't make any of those excuses. And to pretty much get dominated, I understand it was only a 10-point final score difference, 27-17, I believe it was. Let me double check, because there were definitely points there late in the game where I stopped paying attention because there was nothing worth paying attention to. So, I would say the score was probably closer than what the game really was. At one point I tweeted, if you're the Arizona Cardinals, just look for Marvin Harrison Jr., throw him the football. Good things will happen. There's nothing the Cowboys were doing to stop him. And this is a Marvin Harrison Jr. who I would have said 2 years ago, well, of course that should be the game plan when he was coming out of Ohio State. But he hasn't been that player in the NFL. He's shown glimpses, but he hasn't put it all together like that. And it's probably not all on him. Probably Arizona has a lot to do with it as well. But he looked exactly like the type of player that you would take very high in a draft and you would build your offense around. And that is become the norm when you play the Dallas Cowboys defense. You got a guy that's in a slump, that's a team that'll get you out of it. You got a guy that's feeling down about himself at quarterback, wide receiver, running back, play the Dallas Cowboys, you'll build up some momentum. You'll start feeling good about yourself. It seems to be working out fine for the Bears. Seems to be working out fine for the Carolina Panthers. Who knows? Maybe the Arizona Cardinals go on a 5-game winning streak now. I don't know. But what I do know is that the Cowboys are not a very good football team. And so when you go back to the way Monday started with Jerry Jones doing the Sirius XM NFL radio interview with Stephen A. Smith from Texas Live that went on for over an hour, and there was a crowd there, and clearly Jerry was playing to the crowd, and had some very quotable things, whether it be about Micah Parsons or about the team or about how, hey, like he said, when things get kind of boring, he'll stir it up. And then he kept talking about how they had made a trade. We didn't give you any details, just said that it's not finalized, but they have a trade in the works. And they might have a couple more come Tuesday, the NFL trade deadline. Well, then he's asked about it on the ESPN pregame show, the 105.3 The Fan pregame show, and he gives similar answers, doesn't talk very much more beyond that, doesn't give you anything exact, even though, let's be honest, we know he's talking about a defensive player, because that's where you need all the help. Now, by all means, these last couple of games, you would never think that the offense was out needing help. They certainly have not played well either, which has been probably the biggest surprise of all. But anyway, back to Jerry's trade talk. Now you go to after the game, and Jerry was definitely walking that back. They could still make a trade, but after seeing what he saw, you could tell that Jerry was not nearly as convicted, as motivated to talk about how that this team is about to make a trade to bolster their defense. I think it's very obvious to him, at least it should be, that this defense is beyond just one trade, and that's with getting DeMarvion Overshown back after the bye as well. So there's a lot of problems with this Dallas Cowboys team. And if they were about to get into an area of their schedule that's going to get real weak, I could maybe make some excuses and maybe give you some examples of why, hey, maybe they do get things on track and get it rolling. But these teams that they have ahead after the Las Vegas game are just too tough for me to think that that's going to happen. And so I don't know if they'll be bad enough to get a top 10 pick, but more focus should be on that than, if you get a trade offer for some type of defensive player that can help you beyond this season, that's totally different. But any type of 1-year contract that it's just a player to help you this year, yeah, I would have no interest in giving up any type of draft pick for that situation where things stand right now. The defense is, you can blame it on coaching, you can blame it on personnel, you can blame it on execution. I don't think anybody is without blame. And because of that, I just think it needs a major overhaul, and I don't see how you do that overhaul during a season. We have a pretty big sample size now. We're technically over the halfway point of this season, and I just don't see how this thing gets turned around I've just stood outside the locker room, whether it be with Jerry or hearing it in the locker room from players or post game at the podium, whether it be Brian Schottenheimer or Dak about, their inconsistencies and how they need to get that right. And it all sounds good, but there just haven't been any answers. I don't even know if there's been even a few that make you think you can build off of something. There are just too many problems there. And so that's why I think you need an off season to retool whatever you're going to think about doing on defense, whether it be overhaul it by keeping Matt Eberflus and rebuilding the personnel to fit what he wants to do, or keeping some of the personnel and going in a different direction, a defensive coordinator and your defensive coaching staff, and making changes there. But one way or another, like that thing, I just don't understand how even the most optimistic fan could think that this defense is going to get fixed in one bye week or in 2 weeks on the field. I don't see how that happens. It's bad at every single level. As soon as you stop the run, then you're giving up big pass plays. As soon as you get some pressure on the quarterback, now all of a sudden the run game's working. And so they're just not good enough. They're not consistent enough to think that you're going to beat any good teams. And they have a lot of good teams remaining on the schedule. And so it's bad times right now for the Dallas Cowboys. There's no question about that. I really thought that they would have a bounce back performance, mainly because that's what they've done all season. When they've had a loss, they've come back the following week and they've played much better. And they didn't lose back-to-back games. So this is the first time that they've lost back-to-back games. And if they had just played the Chiefs, or they just played Detroit or Philadelphia, or Green Bay or some team like that, I might feel a little differently. But the way the Arizona Cardinals look out there today, Monday Night Football, AT&T Stadium, unless that Cardinals team is going to make a deep playoff run that I cannot see as possible, that's just a very, very bad loss. And I feel like there's a few times this season that I've been able to say this, and I'll say this again, this is probably their worst loss of the season when you factor everything that's riding on it. How if you get a win here, maybe you make a move or two at the trade deadline, you got the bye week, you get overshown back, and then you play the Raiders. All of a sudden now you get another win there. You're a game at least above 500, and then maybe you surprise some people in one of those games against the Eagles or the Chiefs or the Lions, and who knows what happens on the back half. Obviously, Washington and New York are winnable games, or at least it looked that way before this game kicked off. At this point now where I'm at, there's not a team in the NFL that I would say, well, the Cowboys will definitely beat that team. There's not a single team that I would say that about right now. A lot of issues that got to get fixed. And, they always say that the bye week comes at a good time. I do think it comes at as good of a time as it possibly could for this Cowboys team, because there has to be some things that change, or maybe they won't. And maybe you'll listen to me just complain after more games about how it just doesn't make sense that a team that has this talented of a roster, I don't think it's as talented to be, let's say, like a lock playoff team, but it's too talented to be playing the way that they've played this season. And so we'll see. I'll be at all the games. I'm not going to stop covering them. But where I stand here today, it's not going in a good direction. Unless you're a person that wants them to have a very high draft pick, then maybe you can get excited about the draft and start breaking down players at positions in need, which are of many. So we will keep doing podcasts. We will try and figure out answers, even though it's clear that they don't have any. And we hope you guys keep listening in. And we're going to try and find a way to fix this thing.
I don't have time to have a bad time. It ain't on my schedule.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, blue label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.